Let's bring in our guests who can talk to us more about this issue. In Sandy in Bedfordshire, we're joined by Lord Naseby. He's the joint chair of the All Party Parliamentary Group for Sri Lanka. He feels the Prime Minister is right in attending the Commonwealth meeting, and Suren Surendiran, who is the spokesman for the Global Tamil Forum, he tried to persuade David Cameron not to go. He joined us via Skype from Dublin. Suren Surendiran, let's start with you first. You tried to persuade the Prime Minister not to go. He's made the point this morning while he visits Jaffna in the north of Sri Lanka that he's the first world leader to visit that area since 1948, since Sri Lanka gained independence. Isn't he highlighting the cause of the Tamils today?
Indeed. One shouldn't take away the credit that the British Prime Minister has taken the trouble to go and see for himself what is going on in Jaffna and what actually happened, speaking to the people and the press, the Udayan newspaper and all of that. I wished that he took some time to speak to the families of the thousands and thousands of disappeared, which is a fundamental issue. The Prime Minister, when I met him on Thursday, on the 7th of November at number 10, promised us two things. He said he will go to Sri Lanka, speak to Rajapaksa and recall and ask him whether he's going to conduct an independent, verifiable, credible investigation. If Rajapaksa doesn't do that, he will call for an international independent investigation into the alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. You see, this leader, Rajapaksa, is the commander-in-chief of the military which conducted all this.
Let me put those points then to Lord Naseby, joint chair of the All Parliamentary Group for Sri Lanka. You obviously have encouraged the Prime Minister to go ahead with this visit. He's faced these protesters today seeking to alert him to their cause, their pain, their distress. Do you feel now that he has made the right decision? Or could this all backfire and possibly the Prime Minister could end up with egg on his face if he doesn't achieve the goals that he's clearly set out?
Listen, we have a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The Commonwealth is a vital part of his job. I want a Prime Minister that shows leadership, not someone who sits at home listening to propaganda. And I'm delighted he's gone. I gave him my view. I go every year to Sri Lanka, or almost every year, and he's right to go and try and understand the difficulty. But none of us should forget that the Tamil Tigers were the worst terrorist organisation the world has ever seen, that they killed, murdered Gandhi, murdered the President of Sri Lanka, and thousands of ordinary civilians were murdered before the war really got to all the end stages. They were asked to surrender. They were asked to release the 300,000 civilians who they were using as a human shield. They were asked to release the child soldiers, well over 1,000 of them. None of that was done. War is very difficult. War is a tragedy. I lived through the war as a boy. I remember Dresden and Hamburg and the Blitz in London. And I remember it took the UK 9 years to get rid of rationing. So far, Sri Lanka's had 4 years. And I think they've done a reasonable job so far. All those 300,000, nearly all of them, are now rehoused. Every school in Sri Lanka has to learn all 3 languages. That's the first time that's ever happened in Sri Lanka. And the 10,000 young people who were conscripted into the child soldiers, they have had now schooling, they have skills, and they're back in the community, and the vast majority of them are happy. And even today, the latest figures I have is that over 1,000 Tamils have returned from Australia, well over 100 have returned from the UK. Now, there are problems, but the people to use are the International Red Cross. They are helping with finding the people that have disappeared. And of course people disappear in a war. They did after the end of our Second World War. But there is a commission there. Maybe that commission needs strengthening. That's what I suggested to the Prime Minister he might like to consider. And yes, the final days of the war do need to be explored. But remember, those no-fire zones were proposed by the Sri Lankans, which meant that the Tamil Tigers should not take any guns into those no-fire zones. Sadly, they didn't agree to that, or they agreed to it and didn't do it. And what we need, I think, probably now is a proper
Okay, let me put those points to Suren Surendiran. You made a lot of points there. Let me put that to Suren Surendiran. At the end of the war, atrocities were committed on both sides, and while there should be an investigation, Lord Naseby says, there also has to be the correct apportion of blame.
Look, I do agree with the Lordship that we are only calling for an international independent investigation into both sides, the Tamil Tigers and the Sri Lankan military. What one must understand, the Prime Minister has clearly said that he is going to call for an international independent investigation if President Rajapaksa doesn't conduct an independent, verifiable investigation. The Prime Minister also said that when he goes to Sri Lanka, he will speak to the 52 heads of government and see whether we should break the tradition of Rajapaksa, the head of government of the host country, leading the Commonwealth for the next 2 years. It's very important that the tradition is broken, because this is an exceptional situation when a head of government is being accused of breaching and breaking international law, committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. Now this needs to be set a precedent that by British Prime Minister being a leader must say to the 52 countries heads of government that Sri Lanka cannot lead the Commonwealth for the next 2 years, and that should set an example going forward. The Prime Minister
let me put that point to Lord Naseby. Should Sri Lanka be leading the Commonwealth, Lord Naseby, with all of this controversy and those questions over its human rights record?
I don't believe their human rights record is that bad, frankly. I mean, people keep inflating the number of people killed in the last few weeks of the war. In fact, we've just had a census
it's not just about the war, is it?
Sri
There are
Lanka.
ongoing questions.
Hold on a minute. Well, of course there's ongoing questions. I've already made the point that it took us 9 years to sort out after the Second World War.
But this isn't about historic allegations. There are also current allegations, abductions of critics of the government. The UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights is concerned about the growing authoritarianism of the government there.
Sexual violence.
The way the government is run is up to the individual country. But I saw the head of the International Red Cross just over a year ago, and I asked him on a one-to-one basis, is there torture in Sri Lanka? Now, if anybody knows if there is torture, it is the International Red Cross. And the answer I got was, no, there is not. There may be a bit of heavy handling and bullying. Now, that is an independent source. So we should stop inflating the situation. And the numbers killed were not 70,000, not 40, not 20,000. We now know from the census by Tamil teachers that it was probably around 9,000. That's an awful lot of people. But equally, those 300,000 were rescued.
Can I come in, Sam? The United Nations Human Rights Council, the United Nations Secretary General's panel of experts say it's over 40,000. The UN Petrie report says more than 80,000. The Bishop of Mannar says over 140,000. All we are asking for an international independent investigation to find out how many people disappeared and how many people were killed and how they were killed. It's quite ironic, with all due respect to the Lordship, that the Lordship was the chair of the All Party Parliamentary Group for a dictator-run country, Maldives, when Mr. Gayoom was the president, and it's so ironic that he's the chair or the co-chair of the Sri Lankan All Party Parliamentary Group.
Suren Surendiran, spokesperson for the Tamil Forum, and Lord Naseby, joint chair of the All Parliamentary Group for Sri Lanka. Thanks very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.